It really is a great model. It's actually quite subtle, but very effective, and it really does look special. Hi there everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Kirk, and today I have got a really exciting review. Now everybody knows that I love Gronks, Class 08 shunters, and certainly the Cupboard Monkey does as well. And you'll also find down in the merch store our Gronk It Up t-shirt, which is great for any other Gronk lover who is out there to look the best when they're at exhibitions, or indeed just when you're in the railway room, because everybody loves a Gronk. But one of the big omissions in my collection has been an O-gauge Gronk. Now, I've got that O-gauge Garden Railway. I've also got a little O-gauge diorama that is functional, but I don't have a Gronk. And when I was recently at the Ali Pali show, I was over at the Dapol stand and something really caught my eye. Well, they've got a range of Class 8 shunters in O-gauge that really do look great, and I've been umming and ahhing for quite some time over purchasing one. But they had an amazing deal on a factory weathered example. And now this isn't just a blowover with an airbrush. No, this is actually weathered by a proper individual who takes time and effort to weather them up. And they're done in batches of 3. So the weathering is fairly unique. But when you look at the model, it actually looks like it's been outdoors, it's used, it's got that kind of atmospheric weathering that would otherwise be really difficult to just do with a quick blowover with an airbrush. So I'm really excited to take a good close look at this Class 8 shunter in O-gauge from Dapol. In association with Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, and also with additional support from TMC, the Model Centre. Check them out at the URL link in the description down below for a fully stocked and comprehensive website that covers products from a whole host of different manufacturers. So come with me and let's take a good close look at the O-gauge Class 8 Gronk from Dapol. You've already seen this in the pickup videos, albeit briefly, from all the goodies that I brought back from Ali Pali. Now, I'm a big fan of the Class 8 shunter, and I've got somewhere in the region of about 15 of them in my collection in 00. But despite having quite a lot of O-gauge items too, I'd never got round to getting one of the Dapol O-gauge Class 8 shunters until now. Now, the model I chose from the Dapol stand is this one, 7D-008-014W, and this is in the Intercity livery as 08795 Swansea. And this is weathered. Now, the weathering on these is done in batches of 3, I'm told. So it's done by a professional weatherer here in the UK, and they do them 3 at a time. And it's very, very special in that it actually really does look amazing. It's the sort of weathering that you might get from one of the professional weathering companies rather than a factory airbrush applied effect. At £180, these were amazing good value for money, and in fact the latest release of the Hornby 00 Class 08 is actually pushing those sort of prices, so really there's never been a better time to move over into the senior scale. We've got the full instructions here in this really nice sturdy box, which gives a good presentation, and we've got a little bit of information about detail, but also DCC fitting, and I'm going to be doing a full DCC fit of this later on in the video. One thing that you should bear in mind on this is that it needs a 6 full power output DCC decoder. Now, an awful lot of decoders, the 21 pin varieties that are 6 functions, are 4 plus 2, and that means they've got 4 full power and then 2 logic. But this locomotive actually needs 6 full power outputs, so we'll discuss that during the DCC fitting. Now, you can, of course, fit a different decoder that doesn't support 6 full power functions, but it will cause some unusual effects and will limit your ability to use all 6 of the lighting functions that this model comes with. It's well packaged in transit and actually really easy to get in and out of this box. So we can see there, here is this Class 8 shunter. And if you look here with my hands for a size comparison, it really is quite a chunky beast. Now we've also got fully posable doors in the cab. Now these aren't sprung loaded, so they won't automatically close themselves, but are fairly readily easy to shut and open. You can also see this weathering effect too, and this looks like a locomotive that's been out in all weathers and has got dirty naturally. It's actually quite subtle but very effective, and you can see the streaking especially on the white of the Intercity livery, and it really does look special. Now it's named as Swansea, but there don't appear to be any nameplates. We do get some additional parts here, which I think are more to do with if you fit DCC sound for just holding the speaker in place. But I don't see any nameplates, but actually I prefer these without names on the side. I think they just look a little bit more genuine workhorse. The wasp stripes on the front and back are really nice and sharp, and we've got a whole host of other detail. The lighting on the 08 here does all work, and we've got forward and reverse running lights, plus we've got shunting lights, and then we've got a working cab light too. And if we just peer inside the cab, you can see that there is a wealth of detail separately applied, really nicely done. And I can see myself looking for a crew to add into this locomotive, and I think it would be well worth the effort. The weight to this locomotive too is really quite substantial. It's amazing how much additional ballasting weight you can get into an O-gauge model without actually compromising the ability to get everything that you need inside. Looking to the front of the locomotive, again, we've got that radiator grille, and you can see these louvres. Behind them, there's the mesh. This really is a great model. Look at that. Whereas in the smaller scales, we've been used to this being just a solid moulded detail. Here in O-gauge, they are so much more like the real deal. Now behind that mesh is where the speaker will go, so we get a really great sound output from this model if you go for the sound option fitting. Buffer beam detail comes fully factory fitted, and these 3 link style couplings are actually fully functional. And what that means is that they're designed to be used with these from the box. We've got fully sprung buffers, which is actually important in O-gauge, because when you're shunting with these, you do tend to run the wagons close coupled, and just like on the full-sized railway, so the buffers and the couplings do actually work just like the real ones. Sprung buffers on the wagons are an absolute must. The roof detail too is great, and you can see that that weathering has extended to the soot marks around the exhaust. We've got the upright whistle, and all of this detail is pretty sturdy as well, so there's no chance of anything falling off with regular handling. You can see that the coupling rods there are nice and slender, just like they actually are on the real ones. I think for so long we've grown used to oversized coupling rods that it is actually quite pleasant to see just what they should look like on a O-gauge model, where there is the space and the strength of materials to be able to accommodate that. The rest of the chassis detail is really nice. We've got all the brake rigging in there too. Looking to the underside, it's a little bit more Spartan, but you're never really going to see this underside. And you can see that those couplings are spring loaded. Again, very necessary for any kind of shunting work. When it comes to DCC fitting, this model is incredibly easy. I've got here one of the Trainomatic 21-pin decoders, and it should be noted that these are of a 4+2 variety on the auxiliary outputs. That means there's only 4 full power outputs plus 2 logic, whereas this locomotive unusually requires 6 full power auxiliary outputs. From the Dapol range, they do an Imperium decoder, which is designed specifically for these models. And there is also decoders available from a number of other manufacturers too that have the full 6 power outputs. But you do need to make sure that you buy the right one, as the 4+2 variety is far more common, and pretty much all decoder manufacturers predominantly produce that format, with the 6 full power versions being something you will have to search for and ensure that you're getting the right one. The Trainomatic decoder does also natively support that smart power pack, and that's something that will really improve the running of any locomotive. To gain access into this locomotive, it really is easy. We don't have to take the body off at all. Instead, just carefully grip the sides of the body and squeeze gently. You can then wiggle and pull upwards this roof, and you'll just feel it pop clear. And then lift it up and the entire roof panel comes off. You can see here on the underside we've got the spacing port where you can attach a speaker, and then inside on the circuit board we've got that 21-pin decoder socket. I've already pre-fitted this locomotive with a 6-function full power decoder. You just need to take off the blanking plate by gently wiggling it from side to side, and then make sure that the orientation of your decoder is the correct way round. Line it up with those pins and then gently push it into place. Once that's all done, you can see that there is a lot of space inside here, and you can add a smart power pack or a stay alive really easily. And you can see here that a stay alive has fitted perfectly down into all of this space at the front. If you wanted to put something like a bass reverb speaker, again, you will have no issues whatsoever fitting all of this into this locomotive. Once the decoder is in place, it's a simple task of just gently clipping back in that roof. Make sure that you get it the correct way round with the ribs to the front side of the locomotive. And there, it's as simple as that to DCC fit. With the locomotive on the DCC Concepts rolling road, I did have a little bit of an issue just lining up the wheels. The reason for this is that the brake rigging does tend to get in the way of the rollers if you place them directly underneath the wheels. The wheelbase is also short enough that these rollers also can't quite get close enough together to adequately sit the locomotive on, but it is possible still to use them to run this locomotive. Once you've selected the locomotive on the handset, we just need to apply power. It may need a little bit of adjustment of the rollers to make adequate contact with the wheel faces. Once it's running, you can see that it runs very smoothly. As you can see, slow speed running is perfectly attainable. It's a little bit more difficult running this on the rolling road than it would be on actual track because of that issue with lining up the rollers. But once it's up and running, it does run very effectively. Any grinding noise you can hear is from the rollers just rubbing on the brake rigging rather than anything in the transmission. The locomotive runs really quite smoothly. Slow speed shunting really is a doddle with this, and I'm particularly impressed not just with the pulling power but also with that slow speed controllability. As you can see, we've got a cab light that we can turn on and off on F3. And then in terms of other lighting functions, we turn on the main headlights. The locomotive is running forwards, so these are white at the front. If we change the direction of the locomotive, these change over to red. And if we go to F4, we get shunting lights, which is where the locomotive shows both a red and a white light at both ends whilst shunting is in progress. The shunting mode and the cab lights are not available if you put in a 4+2 decoder, as the locomotive requires the first 4 full-powered functions to control the directional lighting. The additional 2 full-power functions control the cab light and the shunting light functions, and that brings all of the 6 lighting functions that the locomotive has to offer. The cab light is particularly pleasing. If we open the door up, we can see all of that detail in the cab is very, very visible, and it really does look superb. It's one of the few instances where working cab lighting really does add something special to a model. Now we come to the scores, and the overall package of this locomotive has really impressed me. Certainly it feels really nice and substantial, and when it comes to build quality, there's just nothing really to fault. I've had no issues with this locomotive out of the box whatsoever. There's no detail come off, worked loose, and certainly even this weathering finish has been really nice and robust and has withstood my handling incredibly well. So I've got no qualms about giving this a 10 out of 10. Next up is running quality, and here the locomotive did perform really, really well. We've got a good deal of slow speed running quality coming in, although there was a little bit of flickering of the cab light I noticed, and it was quite difficult to run it on the rolling road, but I'm not sure that that's a fault of the locomotive. Overall, I'm going to give this a 9.5. It's still a great performance from a great model. On DCC Fitting and Innovation, this is one of the easiest locomotives to DCC fit that I've come across. It has to be said that I really do like that easy pull-out roof section, and inside there is so much room. It really does give a lot of scope for aftermarket upgrades in terms of stay-alives, extra bass speakers, full sound fitting, with no issues at finding the space for any of that whatsoever. You could even add in extra light functions if you chose, and there's certainly a huge amount of scope. Maybe even a smoke generator for a plume of exhaust, but I think that's probably one for those who are much more knowledgeable in this area. But I'm still going to give this a 10 out of 10. The only downside might have been that it doesn't work with a 4+2 decoder to give you all of the lighting functions, although the NEM standard for 21-pin decoders is for those 6 functions to all be full power, so I guess it's simply a case of that this removes some of the expense of having the electronics on the circuit board and means that it's nice and simple as long as you get the right decoder. On accuracy and quality of finish, there really wasn't anything that I could fault with this. It really is a great model in every way, and every part of it conforms with what I expect to see on a Class 08 shunter, so I'm going to give this another 10 out of 10. When it comes to value for money, £180 for a quality factory weathered product such as this really is astounding in O gauge. It's not that long ago that we would have been faced with having to pay multiples of that for an O gauge 08 and still probably been left with the need to paint it ourselves. And of course, a paint job is where an excellent model can really quite quickly fall down on its knees and be ruined. So I'm going to give this another 10 out of 10. So that gives us a full-on score of 49.5. And this firmly puts this locomotive up there at the top of the pile of reviews that I'm really, really impressed with the model. There isn't anything too major to fault this model, and there's so many great plus points that if you model an O gauge, then this is an absolute must for you. Some of the Freightliner liveries in this bespoke weathering that Dapol had on their stand were also incredibly well done. And I'm not one for post-privatisation liveries, but they really did look the part. Dapol also do them in every livery from very early BR black right through to the post-privatisation liveries. So there is definitely going to be a livery of a Class 08 that will suit your model. I'd like to stress at this point that this is a model that I purchased myself out of my own money. It is not a review sample. It was chosen at random from 3 different examples in this livery with the weathering that were on sale on the Dapol stand, so it truly is a perfectly random representation of what you could expect out of the box, and I've not been disappointed by it. But this model has really impressed me, and I cannot recommend it more highly. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video. And don't forget, we've got an affiliate link down below taking you to Rails of Sheffield if you really like the look of the Class 8 shunter from Dapol in O gauge. And I'd also love to hear from you in the comments section down below. Do leave your thoughts on today's review model. Is this something that you've got on your layout? Or is this something that you are now considering to go into O gauge and make your own little shunting layout, perhaps with an O gauge shunter as the center stage? Also, don't forget that you can check us out over on Patreon to help us to make the videos that you want to see, with a whole plethora of different tiers of rewards for you. We've also got channel membership open, which gives you additional perks on the Jenny Monday Club. And also, please do consider tickling the like button, sharing this video too to social media. If you haven't already done so, then do please consider hitting the subscribe button. And until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. Additional support for today's video comes to you in association with TMC, the Model Centre. Check them out at the URL link in the description down below for a fully stocked and comprehensive website that covers products from a whole host of different manufacturers. They're also home to the unique custom weathering service for that bespoke finish that cannot be rivaled, and indeed also that custom graffiti that gives your wagons that personal touch. You can also visit them in their North Yorkshire showroom for a fully stocked and friendly visit. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, 3B Rail, and Jennifer Garrett. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.